You're listening to the Empowered Divorce Podcast, where you practice being the chooser in your life again, one day at a time. Thanks for joining me. Hello, my amazing listeners. How are you today? Many of you have kids out of school. How's it been going? How are you holding up? I hope you are taking time for you, and I hope you are learning to love yourself first through the hard summer. But hopefully you're having fun. I really do. If you haven't listened to my episodes on like that first summer, I don't even remember what I titled it, but it's about the first summer divorce and what I did with kids. There's a couple of ideas in there, what to do with kids. Anyways, I'm thinking about you. I get it. Okay. Today I want to do this episode around the difference between intolerable and uncomfortable. When I'm doing brain spotting session, one of the things that I will tell my clients, because brain spotting is such a client-led experience modality, therapeutic modality, they're watching their bodies, they're noticing, they're experiencing the sensations in their body as they're processing the trauma. Part of the brain spot session is a communication and a partnership between myself and a client. And one of the things that I'll tell them is, let me know if this processing becomes intolerable. And along the way, when we're talking about the activation that they're bringing to the session to process, I'll get what's called a SUD level. So it's just the severity of discomfort level between a 0 and a 10. But this is one of the things that a lot of clients are afraid to do when they start talking about doing these types of somatic healing processes is, well, I don't want it to flood. I don't want it to get too big. If it gets too big, then I don't know what to do with that. Well, that's one of the things why I love brain spotting, is because a practitioner knows how to keep that within a window of tolerance. And that's the uncomfortable. I want to know from my client if it becomes intolerable, because then I need to do what I do best and shift some of my techniques to help bring that SUD level, that scale of discomfort down, that intensity down. But I say that so much in my sessions, where let me know if it becomes intolerable or if it's just uncomfortable. And I was like, I got to do an episode on the difference between uncomfortable and intolerable, because there's such good information here. And I think this is really going to be helpful for those of you who are navigating healing, who are navigating your journey to having an empowered divorce, being able to articulate for yourself the difference between, is this uncomfortable or is this intolerable? A lot of times our human brains are going to make everything absolutely intolerable, right? So I'm going to go through the difference today, because the truth is we actually need uncomfortable. We want uncomfortable. Uncomfortable increases our window of tolerance. It helps us to be able to process these emotions within that window. If we don't lean into uncomfortable, if we're always avoiding, resisting, uncomfortable, then that window of tolerance doesn't widen. This is where your resilience lives. Right now, we're increasing our ability to cope with stress that comes with part of being a human. So we actually want to lean into that uncomfortable. And when I'm doing brain spotting with a client, this is what we're doing. Trauma is uncomfortable, whether it's big T or little t traumas. We need to lean into the uncomfortableness of processing, where that trauma can rear its ugly head and just let out of us, right? Just roar out, move out, process out, seep out, however it moves out. We just got to get it out. That's not a comfortable process, but it's required to get it to move, especially when it's been stuck for so long. Being uncomfortable is stepping outside of your comfort zone. Again, this is essential for your growth and your learning and emotional development as a human. It keeps us in that emotional maturity as we're continuing to lean in, as we're expanding our comfort zone. When you go through trauma, when you have very, very difficult emotions, very traumatizing memories of what you have been through, comfort's a natural part of confronting those difficult emotions and memories. Leaning into the uncomfortable is like that little push, right? Just that little push just beyond what feels easy or familiar. It's still within this realm of manageable. And this is a really important level of discomfort that we want to keep pushing ourselves towards, because this is where the really important work is being done. This is the work that challenges those old patterns, those old thoughts, those limiting beliefs that keep you stuck, that keep you from being the creator of your life, that keep you from creating something new, that keep you from seeing other options about yourself or about your life or about your situation. Leaning into the uncomfortable is what brings new insights and what brings healing. This is why I created my Believing in You group coaching program, because I am pushing my clients just beyond what feels easy or familiar, bringing them into that realm of uncomfortability, but manageable. We create such a safe environment to be vulnerable with that in the coaching group that now they're able to challenge these old beliefs, these limiting beliefs. It pushes them to see new ways of thinking, new options that they can attach, new options that they can now start seeing that they actually have in their life and in their situation. Like I said before, leaning into the uncomfortable, it absolutely expands your window of tolerance. This is that zone where you can effectively process and respond to challenges without going into that fight, flight, freeze, right? Without being too overwhelmed or shutting down. Now, intolerable, this is when your system does get flooded and overloaded, when all of the coping mechanisms that you have learned just get thrown out the window. So, severe anxiety, panic attacks, disassociation, right? Those kinds of responses that why I ask my client, if it becomes intolerable, I need to know that I'm watching for when they disassociate. I'm watching for when panic becomes, I'm watching for when their peridactyl gray floods, that PAG floods with too much, because now we're not processing. Now we're not actually in that window of tolerance where we can move the trauma through. This intolerable isn't helping. Now, I've had panic attacks several times in my marriage and through my divorce. Interestingly enough, once I became officially divorced, I never had a panic attack again. Interesting. Those panic attacks are happening because we're not processing emotion and we are stuffing, holding, resisting, shoving it down. And it just becomes too overwhelming. We've shoved, we've resisted, we've avoided so much that your body just, it's going to explode. I use the analogy of like when you're in a pool and you shove it. I used to do this as a little girl all the time, but you push that ball down, and the further you push that ball down underwater, the higher it explodes out of the water. That's what we do to our emotions when we don't lean into the uncomfortable and feel it and process the uncomfortable. We just keep shoving and shoving. Then it goes too far down that it explodes in a panic attack. And now it's just intolerable. Now it's all we can do, just breathe, to the point where I admitted myself into the hospital so many times because I thought I was having a freaking heart attack. It became so intolerable. Disassociation, like I've talked about before, is another coping mechanism. It's protecting you because you've shoved and avoided and resisted. When you are in fight, flight, freeze, when your body is outside that window of tolerance, it becomes too much to bear. And disassociation is actually a way to protect yourself. It's not able to process. We're not giving it space to process. So when experiences become intolerable, when they exceed that window of tolerance, then intolerable is the zone where your body is in that fight, flight, freeze, right? Where it's likely to be triggered when that rational thinking is just significantly harder or near impossible to have happen because your emotions have flooded. The more this happens, the more we have these intolerable flooding experiences. It's damaging. You've pushed yourself too far. And again, this is why I ask my clients, let me know if it's intolerable, because at that point, we're not doing the somatic healing work that they're intending to do, that they're needing to do. When it becomes intolerable, we gotta clamp the fire hose that's spraying all over the place or starting to spray all over the place, because at that point, it's harmful. It's not helpful. It can be more traumatizing than healing. So some of the ways that I'm hoping you can use the difference, is this uncomfortable or is this intolerable? Is use this as you're navigating your journey through an empowered divorce. So for example, my brain told me that it was absolutely intolerable to consider leaving my home where it was spacious, where we had extensive property, where the kids could run around, where I had this massive garden, like all the things. There was a horse farm behind us, a creek. Like, it was a dream. It was my dream. I loved it. It was beautiful. I was just imagining I would settle down there forever. My brain told me that going to a small apartment with my 4 kids was intolerable. So I think that's the first thing that I want you to be aware of is, and why I'm letting you know the difference between the two, is that going to a smaller apartment, it felt very uncomfortable, especially with children. And it absolutely required us to make massive adjustments to less space. We were bumping into each other right in the kitchen. It was, no one could just run away and hide and escape. And you all had to be right there up in each other's business with, well, everybody's trying to process trauma and feel, which actually ended up being the blessing behind it all. But at the time, it felt absolutely massively uncomfortable. And again, my brain was telling me that it was intolerable, but it was really uncomfortable. We had less space. We had to deal with more noise that people were bringing, lots of discomfort. But while this change of space from a house and land to an apartment with zero land and neighbors below you and neighbors all around, it definitely brought sadness, frustration, grief, but it didn't threaten our basic safety or psychological stability for that matter. In fact, it's what created safety and psychological stability, because we got out of an environment, as grand as the house and property was, the environment was not safe or psychologically stable or emotionally stable for that matter. This is a clear example of a situation that's uncomfortable, but not intolerable. Yet I had to be very intentional with my brain to determine the difference for myself so that I could make it through, so that I could take one step forward and expand that window of tolerance, expand my resilience. Another situation that I think sometimes is really common that we can go through the difference here is the finances. Adjusting again to single home, especially if now there's going to be a financial strain because you are leaving. My situation was a little different. There already was a financial strain that I was leaving into what felt like more financial strain. Whatever your situation is, this can feel extremely uncomfortable when you are facing managing your finances, maybe for the first time, trying to budget, having to be strict on a budget, right? Foregoing luxuries that you used to have before that now you're not having anymore. Your brain is absolutely, I'm going to bet, your brain is going to tell you this is intolerable. We want to know the difference, the real difference between intolerable and uncomfortable, because if we allow our brain to run wild with this is intolerable, then we're not going to move forward. We're going to stay stuck. We're not going to have an empowered divorce. Is it uncomfortable to have to learn to budget? Yeah. Is it uncomfortable to not be able to do all of the fun things that maybe you used to do when you had someone's income? Yeah. Extremely uncomfortable. Is it uncomfortable to have to find new ways and multiple ways to find income? Yeah. Extremely uncomfortable. And these changes, yeah, they're going to cause stress, discomfort. But again, they're typically situations that you can manage through, plan through, adjust. They aren't a threat to your safety. Hence the difference between uncomfortable, but not intolerable. And we want to be really, really clear with our brain and be in charge of our brain when it's constantly pumping out intolerable. Okay, another one that I see happen a lot is handling custody and co-parenting or parallel parenting, as I've talked about before. So when you're navigating custody arrangements, you're learning that the person that should be co-parenting with this ex-spouse is going to bring a significant amount of discomfort, right? Disagreements, schedule complexities, lack of communication, blame shifting, I can go on and on. I have gone on and on in other podcast episodes. You know what I'm talking about, those of you who are dealing with this. It's very uncomfortable. And again, your brain is going to tell you it's intolerable. It's stressful. It can be upsetting. It's unsettling even when you're watching this parent not parent the child, when you're watching this parent forgo their parenting responsibilities, when you're watching the parent tell you that you're a horrible parent, when all the things that you might be experiencing are extremely uncomfortable. Trying to co-parent, especially if you're dealing with narcissists and you're parallel parenting, this is going to involve all the logistical problems, the scheduling, making decisions, all of those adjustments when when you have two completely different parenting styles to begin with. It's a lot of significant discomfort. The emotional responses in these situations, the frustration, the anger, the sadness, and even the overwhelm, even feeling overwhelmed by, do I respond? Do I not respond? And do I give in? Do I not give in? Like all of that. And those intense emotions, you really want to be able to manage and lean into the difficulty of it, because if not, it's going to become intolerable. If it's starting to affect your day to day, then we're not leaning into the uncomfortable and it's now becoming intolerable. Now your emotional and psychological functioning are going to be impaired because we are not keeping these situations uncomfortable. And boundaries are uncomfortable. Like I remember full on working. I think I've mentioned this before, but full on working. I'm cleaning someone's house and trying to scrub someone's toilet. And I'm getting blown up by this man telling me all the things that I'm doing wrong or trying to change plans. And I'm trying to hold to the schedule because I got to work and make money. Because guess what? You're not paying child support. I got to do these things. I'm getting blown up by how unreasonable I'm being. And I am literally taking time out of my day by trying to respond to this man. It is absolutely at that point affecting my emotions and my mental state. I allowed it to become intolerable because I didn't hold a boundary, because the boundary was uncomfortable. Do you see where I'm going with this? When we label something as intolerable, we are indicating that there is no viable solutions. There's no way to improve your circumstance. We're implying that there's this level of desperation that calls for immediate or drastic changes, where uncomfortable acknowledges difficulty, discomfort, but it also retains your agency. It retains your ability to create and resolve and find another solution. It retains your agency to adapt and to be resilient. Right now, a lot of you are probably navigating the summer schedule. You're navigating the summer schedule that requires maybe your children to be gone longer or for your other parent to have them more time. Navigating holidays, these special occasions can also feel really, really intolerable, but perhaps it is merely uncomfortable. Again, let's notice the difference here. Why can this be really uncomfortable when your children go with the other parent for an extended period of time, especially if this is your first time? Well, the emotional strain, the deep emotional attachment that you have to special occasions, to traditions, to just spending the summer with kids. Maybe you're working this summer. You used to not have to work and you could go do fun activities and things with the kids, and all of that's gone. Oh my gosh, do I remember the pain of that change? It felt intolerable, but it was really, really uncomfortable. Sadness, more loss, resentment, all of that can surface. The logistical changes that come if you're working now, working more hours and not able to do that. Now you've got, oh my gosh, I remember having to figure out what I was doing with my kids during the summer while I still had to work and provide for them. All of that was massively uncomfortable. I needed help from my family. I needed help from friends. They had to do their own thing. Oh my gosh, they still talk about, at least my youngest does, still talks about the school workbook. I would go and get educational workbooks and I would assign them pages. Like they had to do so many pages out of their math, so many pages out of their reading. They had to do like book reports. Like I had to do all of these things, and they had a whole checklist of things they had to check off before they could jump on their Xbox or whatever, household chores. I mean, I just tried to keep them busy in the morning for as long as possible while I was working. And that's the best that I could do some days when other people couldn't help out. It was really, really uncomfortable. Why is it not intolerable? Because I found new traditions that accommodated our new style, that accommodated our new family structure, that accommodated our new schedule. I went camping for the first time with my kids alone. We made a tradition out of going camping and doing this motorboat on this lake. And even though every time we went, we had some fiasco happen, it is memories, beautiful, treasured memories, because we found new ways to create them because we had to. We adapted. The adaptability created resilience. We found new joy in new circumstances. Why is it not intolerable? Because I found new friends to support me. I found the most amazing people in my life because I needed to. I needed to have help and support. I will love these people and they are stitched in my heart forever because they filled in the emotional gap. They filled in the time gap when I couldn't spend time with my kids. They spent time with their friends, these beautiful families that took them in. Why is it not intolerable? Because we still maintain some functionality, even though it was absolutely emotionally taxing, challenging, but we kept functioning. We kept moving. We all kept waking up, doing our daily responsibilities. I still cared for the children the best I could. It looked different. It had to, but I still put one foot in front of the other. So it wasn't intolerable. They still played baseball. I still somehow managed to figure out how to get them to all these different places. You figure it out because when you lean into the uncomfortable, you grow that window of tolerance. You grow your ability to be resilient. You grow your capacity to figure it out and find options because you step into your agency when you lean into uncomfortable. This creates your opportunity for growth. The last one that a lot of you are going to roll your eyeballs around is dating again. Yes, the prospect of dating again, especially after a long-term relationship where you experience absolute just pain, turmoil, horror, all the things, hell, experience hell. Dating again might feel absolutely intolerable. It requires you to be vulnerable again. And remember, when your vulnerability has been thrown out of whack, when your vulnerability has been misused and that wise femininity of vulnerability, sensitivity, intuition has been thrown out of whack, then it feels very uncomfortable to be vulnerable again, especially when there's a possibility of rejection or judgment. I tell my ladies in my workshop, let's just work on not rejecting yourself first, right? But vulnerability requires the risk of rejection. That's what creates intimacy, vulnerability. And it's really uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because we're risking that rejection and disappointment. A no can feel like a personal critique. Like, what's wrong with me that he just said no, rather than not making it mean anything about you or having it damage your self-esteem or your self-worth or even optimism. It's uncomfortable to navigate the new way of dating. I mean, when my sister's like, "Oh, we can get online," I'm like, "On what? Like, what are we even doing here? Like, why can't we just go back to the old school ways?" I prayed so hard for that. I prayed so hard for that. But navigating the new norms around dating can be really, really uncomfortable when you haven't been on the dating scene in a long time. It's changed dramatically, and it keeps changing. Even from when I was doing it, it's changed. So adapting to the new dating norm, getting online, putting yourself out there, all of those add different layers of complexity and potential stress, but it's uncomfortable. Then, of course, just the emotional uncertainty of dating. You're talking to new people, you're managing new emotions, around your sexuality. All of that can feel really, really uncomfortable. The potential for new love mixed with the heartbreak is a roller coaster when you're dating again. It's all really uncomfortable. Why is it not intolerable? Because unlike the situations that you've lived where you didn't have control, you have significant control over the pace at which you decide to date and the choices that you make about who you see, who you date, how often, and how you even communicate with this person. You are in so much control here. And this control allows you to step back if things become too overwhelming. This provides that buffer against the intolerable. It's also not intolerable because each time you have a dating experience, even if it's not a successful one, even if it plummets, and I have such great stories, I share these in my dating workshop, but all of those unsuccessful dates are not intolerable when you choose to make a personal growth or self-discovery out of it. When you use that as an opportunity to grow, to self-reflect, to learn, you're learning more about what you prefer. You're learning about maybe boundaries that you still need to have. You're learning about more resilience. You are absolutely contributing now to your sense of self, not depleting from it. So that's why it's not intolerable. But is it uncomfortable when a date doesn't go the way that you hoped because someone set you up and all you did was listen to them cry, literally cry about their own experience, and now you become their therapist on the date? Yeah, uncomfortable to say the least, but not intolerable. Okay, one more reason why it's not intolerable is because as you navigate the ups and the downs when you date again, you're going to put into practice these coping mechanisms that you're going to learn when you sign up for my Dating from Within workshop. You're going to use these coping skills to handle rejection, to handle disappointment, and to trust that you can't unknow what you know. That when you trust yourself first, when you date yourself first, when you love yourself first, that can be uncomfortable when things don't work out the way that you want, but it's not intolerable because you are learning to take yourself, your higher self, into these dating experiences. You'll be able to build more and more resilience and know more and more of what you want and don't want as you lean into the uncomfortable. If you avoid it, if you resist it, if you run away from it, if you hide from it forever, then you're not growing your capacity to be resilient. You're not growing your emotional maturity, and you're not learning how to become relational. Learning to become relational means leaning into uncomfortable. But when you take your agency into every single one of these experiences, that's how you have an empowered dating experience as well. And the same thing applies as you're navigating your own situation right now, today. Take your agency with you, take choice with you. Choose to lean into sad, loss, anger, disappointment. It's uncomfortable. Let it be uncomfortable. Lean into the uncomfortable. Find growth in that. Name the emotion, find it in your body. Remember, you're wanting to find that emotion and attach it to your body. Find where it feels uncomfortable in your body. That brings you to the present moment, which protects you from it becoming intolerable because that's the disassociation or that's the flooding. Scale it out. Okay, this feels really uncomfortable. Between a 0 and a 10, how uncomfortable is this right now? If you're like, okay, this is a 10, then pull out your coping tools, right? Do your breathing, get up and get a drink of water, walk around, move your body, do those things to calm and get back in that window of tolerance, squeezing your muscles, squeezing ice cubes, doing a couple of those things that you've probably learned along the way to help decrease that intensity and decrease that discomfort. Then when you bring it back down to a 3 or a 4, then let yourself process it and feel it. Have a safety plan for when it is intolerable. Know what those strategies are. Know who your go-to people are. Then regularly check in with people that you trust, that you feel safe with. Check in with them about your emotional state. Let them know how you're doing. If you don't have anybody right now, reach out to me, whether that's through my divorce Q&A, whether that's through my coaching group, whether that's just through a session. Find someone that you can reach out and do regular emotional check-ins with to help you process these emotions so that we're not shoving, and then they become intolerable. I talk about taking things one step at a time, but I'm going to say that leaning into uncomfortable is not just a step, it's a leap towards true empowerment and in your healing journey. It's in these moments that you intentionally lean into the uncomfortable, when you confront what feels difficult, uneasy, that you will discover your true resilience and your strength. It's like I mentioned in the victim, emerger, reclaimer, and chooser, right? Those different stages. Remember, in that reclaimer stage, one of those thoughts is, I am stronger than I thought, because you've leaned into the uncomfortable that is required in emerger. Each uncomfortable step is an opportunity for you to practice your agency, to assert your agency, to become the author of your life, rather than just a bystander, rather than letting other people choose that. You've done that enough. Embracing the discomfort allows you to transform these challenges into a life that you choose, a life that you create. When you lean into the uncomfortable, you're actively participating in your own transformation. Think about that. How encouraging and inspiring is that? Rather than giving that responsibility to somebody else, which many of us did, you're taking that power back. You're no longer just surviving. Now you're choosing. You're redefining your boundaries, your desires, and what you're capable of. I think this is essential for anybody navigating through divorce and the aftermath of divorce. I think it completely shifts your role from being a passive recipient of what life dished out, what someone else chose to do that impacted you, to now becoming the empowered creator of what you are actively going to do despite it. Choosing to face the uncomfortable is choosing growth over stagnation, courage over fear, transformation over conformity. I think we're done conforming. I think it's time to be done conforming, and especially conforming to what your human brain is by design going to do, and that is make everything intolerable. You don't have to believe everything your brain says. Who you are is not your brain. Question your brain. When it tells you this is intolerable and you can't figure this out, question it, doubt it, get curious about it, challenge it. Consider, maybe this is just uncomfortable, and then connect to your body, like I said, find the intensity and process it. Be with it. It will grow you, it will challenge you, it will strengthen you, and it will help you continue being the chooser in your life and creating the life that you want, because you absolutely can. Take care, everybody.
I was born to fly and spread the